Okay, guys. So today we are going to talk about a very famous questions which interviewers are asking in multiple interviews or multiple companies, and this was a recent questions asked in the Flipkart interview. So this Flipkart interview, people are asking question that can you implement a function for you can say polyfill for the reduce. So today I'm going to talk about how we can, correctly write the polyfill of the reduce. There are a lot of edge cases we are going to cover, and then we are going to write the actual function implementation. So yes, so when you have to lead a particular interview or the interview which is having a very simple question, so at that particular point of time you have to understand what are the edge cases which are going to come while implementing this particular function. And to handle all the edge cases will definitely give you edge, and you will be signed in front of other candidates which company is interviewing. So let's we are going to talk about how we can implement this MyReduce functionality, which is going to be the replica of the reduce. So for that particular purpose we have scaffold, you can say MyReduce function, which is added in the prototype of the array. So it will be available to the every array objects which are going to get used inside a application. So let's try to understand that how we can approach this particular question. Fine. So this MyReduce function is going to accept two parameters. So the first parameter, first parameter is going to be a function, okay, and the second parameter, it is going to be a accumulator, okay. So now this first parameter, so this is going to be a function, and and the second parameter, since it is going to be a accumulator. So these two parameters it is accepting. Now let's start the edge cases from here itself. The first edge case that we are going to consider related to these functions, these two parameters. So the first parameter is, since it is going to be always a function, so we need to check this whether this particular parameter is actually a function when it is getting passed in my polyfill. So how we can check this particular part, that we can check the type of function equals to function. If it is a function, or we can check the negative part itself. If it is not a function, then what we have to do, we have to throw exception right from here. So we will say new, and for this particular purpose we have a dedicated exception type called type error. So we will say type error, and in this we are going to simply say the message that type error function first parameter must be a function. Fine. Now for the accumulator. Now the accumulator can be of two types. Either the accumulator is undefined, or the accumulator is having values. So what we have to check, if the accumulator is getting passed, if it is getting passed, then it will have non-undefined value, and if it is not getting passed, then it is going to have a undefined value. You got my point? So let me try to explain you how I'm talking about. So if I am calling 1 2 3 dot MyReduce, and inside that if we are passing function, so the function is for now I'm saying accumulator will be the first parameter, then the item is going to be the second parameter, So in this case, if I'm saying accumulator plus item, a very simple use case for summing up all the values of an array. And if I am passing here undefined, or if I am passing here, if I am not passing any value, both the cases will be considered equal. Now, if you will pass a null, then it will be considered a very different case. In this case, the accumulator is having a value. So that's why I'm saying either it is a non-undefined value or it is an undefined value. So how can we handle this particular case? We will simply say if accumulator, if type of accumulator equals to undefined. So if the accumulator is actually undefined, so how we are going to handle this case? So in that particular case, what happened? In case of accumulator is undefined, it takes the first value of an array. So what it is going to do? The accumulator is actually going to take the first value. So that is this. Okay, for now what I can do, I can define array as this. So const array equals to this for the sake of readability. Now the accumulator will be array of 0. So the first value it is going to take. See, now we are taking the first value, but we need to understand it. If we are taking the first value, over here, whether this first value actually exists or not exists. It can be possible, right? That someone is passing value like this, 1 dot my reduce, okay, and the same thing it can pass over here. So in such scenario, what we have, if we will try to access directly 0, it means it is boom. It's going to get the undefined value, and it is not going to be the exact replica of what the reduce function do. So for that particular purpose, before getting the value from the array, what we need to check whether this array is actually having value or not. So how can we check it? We can check it like array dot length. So if array dot length is not having a value, it means what we cannot process this. Okay, so we can simply again throw new type error, and inside that we will simply say type error, and we will say both array and accumulator. Okay, we will say reduce function is called with empty array with no accumulator value. Accumulator value. Fine. Cool. So now if you are seeing here, this array accumulator is now getting the array as 0 value. So let's try to understand if it is taking the accumulator's first value, so from where it should start. So there are two cases to start. Now we are free to start the actual processing. So let I equals to, so from where I should be starting? So I can start from 0 if the accumulator is not a undefined value. And if accumulator is an undefined value, in that case, it should be starting from 1. Because the first value goes to the accumulator itself. So how can we decide it? So we will say the start index itself is equals to 0. And if accumulator is having undefined value, then we will simply say start index equals to 1. So let's start with that. So let's start I equals to start index and I less than say start. Okay, I already taken the array. So array dot length and I plus plus. So it's a very simple. Now it is going to be a very simple function. So we are going to call the function with this accumulator and the uh, array of 0. Okay, and this value is going to get assigned to accumulator itself. So the next time accumulator will come, it will again start with the new value which function has returned. So this is how the reduce works, right? Now what we have to do, we have to return this accumulator value, and it's fine now. But there is again a problem. This particular function is not only accepting accumulator and array value. Sorry, I'm passing here array 0 I. So not only accepting the accumulator and the item, it also accepts two different other values. So it accepts the index. So I am passing index here I, and the other value it accept is what other value it accept? Sorry, yes, array itself. Array itself. So four values this reduce function accept. So we pass this particular value, and the processing happens inside the function, and it's again get returned to the accumulator. So now my function is complete. We have to simply test this particular function now, and we should be golden. So let's start with that. Let me try to see if I have some npm run test. Okay, so this is index dot. I am saving it here, and all my test cases have passed related to the accumulator, related to the myReduce function. So let's try to see this how it is working. We will go to the function itself. So let's go to the function itself. This spec. So there are multiple cases here. So the first is checking itself whether the myReduce is defined. So it is accepted. Now the second particular function is checking with these values. It should not throw the exception. Okay, it's not throwing the exception. And data dot myReduce 100. Okay, so if you are seeing here, we are passing 100 instead of a function type, so it should throw an error. So this is also passing. Now the other things that we are checking over here is expect myReduce is having the empty value. So this is an empty value. So if the empty value is there, then what is going to be the actual result? It's the accumulator itself. So this is also passing. So the fourth scenario where we are testing is we are checking for this test index value, and what we are checking over here, we are checking this function has been called 3 times. So if you see here, this is a accumulator for this is a function which is going to pass into myReduce, and the actual call is happening over here with myReduce. The spy function is getting called, and we are passing an empty value over there. So if I'm passing the empty value over there, so if you see, it is getting called 3 times because the length is 3. That's why it is getting called 3 times. Now for each times, if you see, the first time the accumulator value is empty, then the item is getting passed as 1, then the index is 0, and the data is same everywhere. For the second time, if you see, this has actually combined the value. So you are seeing here empty and 0 is getting passed over there. Then the second item, then the index, and then the data. Similar with the third call is also happening. Now this is the case for the accumulator. Okay, so okay, this is a very simple test case. That's fine. Just checking for the 0 and 100, and it is getting calculated perfectly fine. Now this is an interesting test case. So over here, what I am checking? I am checking if the test accumulator value is not provided. In that case, what is happening? We are, for the first case, what we are doing, we have 1, 2, 3. In the myReduce, we are not calling the accumulator function. So if I'm not calling the accumulator function, you remember what happened? The first value goes to the accumulator. So the first value is going to the accumulator. That's why the function is only getting called 2 times. It is only getting called 2 times. And if you see, the first call is happening directly with the index 1, okay, and 2 for the second call, and the value is also 2 and 3, and the accumulator is starting from 1 and 3. Similar way, if you see, if the test accumulator value is not provided and provided on the empty array, so the array is empty, in that case it should throw an error. Fine, all these test cases has been edge cases has been covered. Now, to make you understand if the reduce function actually works in that way, what we can do, I can try to replace this with the reduce instead of myReduce. So I will simply say reduce and see if the test cases are working. See, the test cases are working, still working fine. If I say here reduce, then the test cases are still working fine. If I will say here again reduce, so the test cases are still working fine. Here also, if I will say here reduce, so the test cases are still working. This is a stupid case, so still it is working. Cool. Is there any place my reduce is there? Okay, my reduce are still there. So I will say here reduce. Here also I will say reduce. Is there any places my reduce is there? Where is my reduce? Reduce. Reduce. Here is also reduce. Okay, is there any places my reduce is there? No.